Chapter 530. Kaido looked at Dustless's eyes unexpectedly. He didn't expect this guy to have other eyes. Especially after he was defeated by Dustless, he listed the latter in the list of dangerous people, and his danger index is even higher than Whitebeard. Think about it, a person with a higher danger index than Whitebeard, how can his dojutsu be a trick to deceive people? Remembering the miserable scene after the genjutsu that day, Kaido closed his eyes in an orderly manner and no longer looked at Dustless's eyes. Thinking of the elusive genjutsu, Kaido's heart was unusually heavy. Unknowingly, he will be pulled into the nightmare world if he doesn't pay attention. Your limbs are well developed, and your brain works very fast. But I'm afraid you will be disappointed. This is not the eye I used before, but compared to the Sharingan I used last time, this eye is much more terrifying. Dustless's left eye suddenly turned into a mysterious purple eye, and in the eye socket, a black coil spread, and a circle of ripples was clearly visible. It is Rinnegan Sharingan. What kind of witchcraft do you have? With a snort, Kaido continued to close his eyes without fear. In fact, fighting with closed eyes or open eyes is the same for him. Kaido, whose observation haki is already unfathomable, doesn't need to rely on pure vision to fight. Genjutsu can deceive the eyes, but it can't deceive observation haki. Compared to genjutsu, I'm actually better at attacking. Dustless raised his eyelids and stared at Kaido, who was on guard, and answered truthfully. His voice fell. Without waiting for Kaido to answer, he raised his right hand and locked his position, and a black hole appeared under his hand, and then a majestic and oppressive suction force came out. 10,000 Mammoth Heaven Pole. A strong gravitational force suddenly enveloped him, and his body floated up. Aware of the abnormality of his body, Kaido's old face suddenly collapsed and became extremely ugly. The whole person seemed to have lost the restriction of gravity, floating uncontrollably, and it was extremely difficult to maintain the balance of the body, let alone launch an attack on Dustless. Even so, Kaido gritted his teeth and continued to persist. He was not a person who gave up easily, and he tried to control the balance of his body and tried to stabilize. You still want to struggle at this point? Naive. Dustless said coldly with a sneer on his face. The biggest advantage of ninjutsu is its strangeness and diversity, especially for people like Kaido who don't know anything about it. It's very difficult to deal with. Get over here. As Dustless' voice fell, the gravitational force in his palm became even more violent. Kaido, who was still struggling, was suddenly pulled over by brute force. Bastard! Die! Kaido flew into a rage out of humiliation when he saw that he couldn't get rid of the gravitational force. Kaido showed confidence. Armament haki can defend against any physical attack, and observation haki is enough to avoid any strange ability. This is his confidence in facing Dustless. Little did he know, Dustless's mouth swept a strange smile, and his eyes were staring at Kaido. It seemed that he saw Kaido's embarrassed look, and his sneer became more obvious. Kaido, who has a deep understanding of observation haki, suddenly realized that something was wrong, and his hair stood up, and he instinctively felt that something was wrong. Chapter 531. In such a hot environment, Kaido's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. He didn't dare to be careless. His nerves have always been in a high-density state of concentration, on guard against Dustless's every move. In a fight between masters, victory or defeat is often in a short period of time, especially the enemy at present. For Kaido, it is the strongest enemy in his life. 100 Beast Kaido knows nothing about Dustless, but Dustless is quite familiar with him, so he is already at a disadvantage. If he is careless, his pirate career may come to an end. Since you don't come over, then I will attack. Seeing Kaido not move for a long time, Dustless changed from defense to offense and rushed out. The Rinnegan in his left eye rotated rapidly, jumping out with strong energy fluctuations. Fortunately, he appeared early, otherwise, would have, Doflamingo, who was secretly watching the battle from afar, shuddered. He couldn't help but be stunned when he saw this exaggerated fight. If Dustless had appeared for just a second less, he might have been crushed into pieces by Kaido at that time. Seeing Kaido's strength, Doflamingo couldn't help but laugh at himself. How ignorant and ridiculous his previous idea was. He thought that he was only a line away from the Yonko for emperors, but now it seems that the gap is completely different. The so-called Shichibukai and Yonko for emperors are not comparable at all. It is even said that the two sides are one-sided. Apart from Hawkeye, there is no Shichibukai that can fight against Yonko for emperors. Boom boom boom, accompanied by an ear-piercing roar, a large deep pit appeared out of thin air on the flat ground. In the fierce battle between Kaido and Dustless, the slightest collision also produced strong sparks, which then turned into fierce shock waves that spread out, rewriting the surrounding geographical environment. Countless dense cracks on the ground are clearly visible, some of them are enough to swallow and annihilate an adult human. This kind of crack is not unique, and there are countless of them. Gulp, seeing this, Doflamingo began to think of retreating. Even if he was unwilling, the cruel reality of the current dangerous situation told him that this battle was not something he could interfere in. Now, he had the will, but he was powerless. His body was covered in wounds, and he was already on the verge of death. Whether he can survive or not is a problem, let alone intervene in the battle between Kaido and Dustless. Go to hell. Observation Haki locked on Dustless's every move, looking at the temporary loopholes in Dustless's body. Kaido's killing intent burst out in an instant, the dark iron fist broke out with full strength. The condensed strength is enough to blow up a large building in an instant. Shinra Tensei. Hugging the sky with both hands, an unstoppable repulsive force erupted, forming a 360-degree absolute defense. The demonic aura that was so deep that it wanted to crush the world made Kaido's nerves tense up uncontrollably. The deep blood stain on his chest was caused by it. Kaido was not an idiot, and the world knew that there was such a strong demon energy, and only the legendary weapon could reach this level. Chapter 532. As a top pirate in the New World, Kaido is also well informed. Such a suppressive and chilling monster aura can only be felt by the legendary first Ghost Blade. Among the 12 Wazakwando swords, only the first Ghost Blade has such a peerless edge, and the monster aura that makes people breathless. No, what means did this guy just use to escape the perception of Kenbenshoku? Touching his strong chest covered with blood, 100 Beast Kaido speculated. At the moment when he was attacked by Dustless, it was as if he appeared out of thin air and suddenly drilled out of the void. Well, this kind of weak attack, I have suffered many times in my life. Glancing at Dustless with disdain, the wound on Kaido's chest slowly recovered. Only a slender trace was left on the chest of a strong physique. Look carefully. In my life, I've received countless wounds of all kinds, but I've still survived. Not only that, but I also got the title of the world's strongest creature. Kaido said proudly, and at the same time, he raised his arm, and countless wounds were clearly visible. It's an interesting ability. Seeing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly and nodded secretly. Kaido's expression changed, and he also saw it. Although the change in his face was only temporary, it still couldn't escape Dustless's sharp eyes, and the corner of his mouth outlined a hidden smile. Every time he healed his wounds, Kaido's face would be a little pale and weak. Although it was fleeting, Dustless still keenly captured it. In fact, the previous series of warm-up was also a deliberate test. During this period, every time Kaido healed his wounds, the more deadly the wound, the paler and weaker his face would be. Healing the body actually consumes physical strength indirectly, and the heavier the wound, the more physical strength it consumes. In the long run, Kaido can't afford it. I've split you into 4 or 5 pieces, I don't know if you can heal. Touching his clean chin, he stared at Kaido and asked. Dustless's sharp eyes locked onto Kaido's heart. His face was dark and cruel, and the killing intent in his bones was not concealed at all. Affected by Dustless's killing intent, the first-generation ghost blade in his hand cried out in excitement, and a dense killing intent rushed towards Kaido. Hearing this, Kaido's expression froze, and then he said without showing any weakness, "If it works, you can give it a try." His eyes, which were even bigger than Tongling, stared at Dustless. Kaido was full of confidence. This time, he didn't dare to be careless. His body became extremely bright and dazzling. Kaido did not hesitate to enter armament haki hardening again, escaping the perception of observation haki. If I'm not mistaken, it may be the ability to move through space. Fuck, does this kid have a devil fruit tree at home, eating all kinds of fruits? Even if he moves at the speed of light, he can't escape the perception of observation haki. Now Dustless is like a ghost that comes and goes without a trace. Kaido can only think of it as the ability of space. The habits and style of pirates are extremely bad, and when they get angry, they are even more unrestrained. Swearing is a way for pirates to vent their dissatisfaction. Against Dustless, 100 Beast Kaido has been holding back his anger for a long time, and his dazzling ability is really a headache. Whiz! Regardless of Kaido, who was daydreaming, Wuchen raised his saber and waved his hand to release a blood-red chop. It crushed Kaido through all the thistles and thorns. Don't underestimate me. His eyes emitted a cold light. Facing such a threatening cold light, Kaido didn't retreat. Instead, he rushed forward like a fierce tiger. Boom! The iron fist condensed all the strength of the whole body, blasted out, and the bloody light was suddenly dismembered, and the scattered hurricane pulled out messy cracks on the ground, as simple as cutting tofu. Bang bang bang, Kaido made threatening gestures as he dashed forward. Due to his immense strength, every step he took caused the ground to tremble. You are really worthy of admiration. Wuchen nodded slightly as he carefully sized up Kaido, who was coming toward him. Then, his expression became as cold as a knife. He also rushed straight out without fear. Boom boom boom. The intense collision continued. The fight between the two of them had already surpassed the understanding of humans. Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Sand and stones were blown away. Even the air was rumbling from the collision. It was extremely hot. Others are worried about the identity of Dustless and Flamingo, but Kaido naturally has no scruples. The identity of Tenzin has no effect on him, and only the one with the biggest fist is the final winner. Pucci. With the sound of flesh being cut, Kaido's skin suddenly had a bloody mark, but the next second the bloody wound healed. Whoosh! Dustless suddenly stepped back and pulled a distance away from Kaido, and his eyes narrowed, using some means to stimulate the growth process of the cells to increase all aspects of the body. Dustless guessed that this method can even achieve the amazing effect of limb regeneration, but the side effects are also very big. First of all, the physical strength is unbearable. It seems that the conventional method is useless. Dustless stared at Kaido's chest, and the Rinnegan Sharingan in his left eye rotated rapidly, and a majestic eye power flooded out. The focus of Dustless's eyes was on Kaido. Boom boom boom, without warning, a strong repulsive force exploded, and the center of the explosion was in front of Kaido. The sudden impact easily affected Kaido, and there was no way for him to escape, and he was thrown hundreds of meters away in an instant. Chapter 533. Kaido was lying on the ground half dead, his breathing was weak. Due to the gradual loss of vitality, a sense of powerlessness spread all over his body, and it was no longer enough to maintain the state of armament haki. Kaido, who was in a trance, saw the miserable appearance of the future. He was covered in blood and wounds all over his body, and he was lifted in the air like an ant. The initiator was Dustless. I can't die yet. Kaido's old eyes emitted a cold luster, and his face was full of madness. He had been sailing the sea for so many years, how could he die in such a small, sinking island? Can't die. Who do you think can save you? A contemptuous voice sounded in Kaido's ears, with ridicule and naked contempt. He couldn't even move his body, and he was still delusional. Looking at the voice, it was dustless. Looking up and staring at the figure that suddenly flashed, Kaido's eyes were filled with murderous intent again. He stared fiercely at Dustless. If eyes could kill, at this moment, he would be full of holes and turned into a stick. It seems that this is the end. Looking down at the bloody Kaido, Dustless said indifferently. His cold tone was as cold as frost, and he looked at Kaido's eyes without any human emotions. In Dustless's eyes, Kaido was already a corpse. Can he still be repaired? But it seems that no matter how much he can be repaired, he is already at the end of his rope. The wound in front of his eyes was slowly healing. The bloody wound had once again coagulated, leaving behind an ugly scar. Even so, the healing speed was much slower than before, completely at the speed of a tortoise. Kaido was also panting heavily. His coarse old face was pale and covered in sweat. You want to turn around when you're at the end of your rope? It's not suitable to daydream in broad daylight. Staring at Kaido, who continued to stand up, Dustless frowned. This kid's vitality shouldn't be so strong that he could stand up after being beaten twice. The blow just now had crushed all the bones in Kaido's body, and his internal organs were dislocated, but he didn't expect this old guy to stand up. Of course, it could also be understood in another way. Driven by his undying desire, Kaido gritted his teeth and continued to fight. I'm sorry, I just like to daydream. Even though he was seriously injured, Kaido did not show any weakness and chose to retort sharply. Any struggle is futile. Seeing that Kaido continued to stand up, Dustless kindly advised him softly. Since he was going to die anyway, there was no need for him to suffer. He might as well die peacefully. You want me to quietly wait for my death? You are not qualified. Kaido snorted disdainfully. At the same time, he grinned, revealing a sinister smile. A cunning light flickered in the corner of his eyes. Glancing at Kaido, Dustless was unusually calm. In the face of absolute strength, any ability, including conspiracy and trickery, had little effect. A plan thought up by a mere beast was not even worth mentioning. Use whatever means you have. Dustless taunted Kaido with his index finger. Sometimes, watching a clown's confident performance could be considered a good entertainment. At the very least, it would add some joy to the ordinary and boring life. Even if I die, I will drag you down with me and purify the atmosphere of mankind. You alone stink the entire human race. Kaido's eyes were as sharp as lightning. From Dustless's playful eyes, he sensed a kind of contempt, so he immediately used his mouth to attack. Dustless heard this without any expression, and his eyes were as calm as stagnant water. There was no need to argue with a dying man. Whoosh! Using all his strength, Kaido jumped dozens of meters into the sky, then turned around and slammed into the ground like a meteor. I was quite looking forward to it, but it turned out to be the same old trick. Looking up at the falling Kaido, a deep sense of disappointment flashed in his eyes. With the help of the falling force, he could indeed strengthen his attack, and the power could even flatten the island, but if he wanted to shake Dustless, it was still insufficient. Stupid. Dustless's lips curled into a sinister smile. When a human fell from the sky, it was very difficult for them to control their body as they wished due to the loss of balance. In other words, Kaido was now a living target. The tip of his thumb condensed a golden luster and aimed at Kaido's heart. Kaido wanted to use his own body to test the strength of Dustless' attack, so he naturally would not show any mercy. Laser. A golden beam of light shot out from Dustless' thumb, rising from the ground and shooting straight at Kaido, who was falling from the sky. A sharp light that could pierce through everything rumbled out. Poochie. Blood splattered in the air. A scorched wound suddenly appeared on Kaido's heart, and blood flowed uncontrollably from his throat. Even so, Kaido's expression did not change as he swooped down towards the island. Looking up at Kaido's coarse old face and hysterical madness, Dustless had a flash of inspiration. He seemed to understand what this kid was planning. This bastard. It seems that he wants to sink this island and perish together with me. Dustless could not help but sweat for Kaido's madness. He really wanted to know why this kid was so daring. After sinking the entire island, he would not be able to stand on it. Kaido himself would also be swallowed by the sea. Everyone knew that there was only one fate for a devil fruit user who fell into the sea. Hee hee. You finally understand my plan. Hee hee. Kaido's unbridled laughter resounded through the sky, venting the bitterness in his heart for a long time. Fighting with Dustless could be said to be the biggest shame in the sea's life. He was almost completely suppressed and beaten up. After about a while, Kaido's wild laughter stopped. He looked at Dustless again. He originally thought that Dustless would show a panicked expression, but the latter was uncharacteristically calm. There was even ridicule in his eyes. There are countless people who want to perish together with me, but only one can do it. Moreover, you will face the same fate as them. Stepping into hell is your destiny. Chapter 534. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There are many people who want his life or indirectly want to die with him, such as Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Uchiha Obito. They all want to die with Dustless, but in the end, they all set themselves on fire. Now Kaido also wants to play the same game, damn it. The ideal is beautiful, but the reality is very cruel. A mere monkey wants to shake the world. There is only one end, and that is self-destruction. The chakra in Dustless's body began to go berserk, and just when he was about to crush Kaido's conspiracy, a flash of light suddenly flashed in his mind, and the chakra also went berserk. If one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, is drowned, the news will be very explosive. The leader of the pirates, 100 Beast Kaido, was choked to death by seawater. His corpse floated in the sea. This funny way of dying was more interesting than killing him. At this time, Kaido's whole body also hit the ground, setting off a sandstorm of several feet high, and even because of the terrifying power, the surrounding mountains had narrow and long cracks visible to the naked eye, faintly showing signs of splitting and collapsing. Boom! 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 The powerful force hit the island, and the originally slowly sinking island swayed from side to side at this moment. The hidden volcano under the ground was violently impacted and suddenly erupted, and the whole island was eroded. At the center of the island, a huge pit appeared, and at first, only a small stream of water came out from the ground, and the seeping water was only a small stream, which was negligible, but finally, with the awakening of the dormant volcano, the whole island was changed unscrupulously, and the weak stream became stormy waves. The change of the geographical environment caused many holes to appear, and countless seawater spurted out from these cracks, and the speed of the island sinking was beyond expectations. Now even if that kid has a lot of means, he will definitely die. Kaido said with an evil smile, and his tone was full of endless pride and satisfaction. At the same time, Kaido's body also underwent earth-shaking changes, and he swam in a strange posture in the water, but the seawater didn't affect him at all. Is this your last card? I didn't expect your ability to be so magical. You can change into other creatures according to your will. It's really an incredible ability. Deep in the sea, Dustless suddenly appeared in front of a strange shark, and his words were full of surprise. This ugly creature is Kaido. What's so surprising? You're so naive. The huge mouth full of fangs spoke in human language, and a horrifying voice came out. It said proudly, as you can see, this is one of my many abilities. Any creature in the sea, land, or air can be transformed with my will. Otherwise, where do you think my name, 100 Beasts, came from? Kaido, who turned into a shark, his devil's fruit was very proud. His devil fruit ability is so powerful, he can change any creature he sees, and can change it according to his will's will. Even in the sea, he could turn into a shark and move stealthily, and he had more advantages than on land. This was also one of the reasons why he was known as the strongest creature, in the sea, land, and air. No matter when or where, he could change into the most advantageous form to fight, and he had an extremely strong geographical adaptability. Dustless slightly nodded and didn't deny it. This strange appearance in front of him is a bit shocking, and a bit out of the ordinary, because the Zoan ability user can turn into an animal. The only difference is that Kaido can change into any creature according to his will. You bastard, you were eroded by the seawater, but you didn't show any discomfort. Kaido, who turned into a super large shark, said with a gloomy face. His big eyes were full of disbelief. How can a devil fruit ability user not be affected by the seawater? This kind of mythical story happened in front of him. How can he not be surprised? Dustless shrugged. He can only sigh. The system's products must be the best. Because the nature of the system's existence is a manifestation of escaping the laws of heaven and earth, the things it gave out naturally can't be treated with common sense. The so-called seawater and sea stone are useless to him. Chat is over. Dustless's face converged and was replaced by killing intent. The water around him changed according to his will, and his face was full of ridicule. Just a beast. Do you think you can do whatever you want in the sea by turning into a shark? I advise you not to take any chances. This kind of naive and ridiculous idea is fatal. Hearing this, Kaido, who turned into a shark, sneered and was about to open his mouth to attack Dustless, but the latter's figure disappeared like a ghost. Above the cloudless sky, Dustless floated quietly, overlooking the disappearing island below, and the Kaido pirates who haven't escaped yet. The killing intent in his eyes was clear. Suddenly, the sky was gloomy, and an unprecedented shadow covered the sky and the ground, covering the sea below. Looking up, he saw a meteorite with a size of tens of kilometers floating above Dustless's head. The great waves will wash away the sand. Whether or not you can escape will depend on your luck. As Dustless's voice fell, the super-large meteorites floating above his head lost control and fell out of thin air. These meteorites were attracted from outer space by Dustless through the Tensigen, and the impact of hitting the sea is self-evident. Wait, Zetsu, what's the situation with Mariehua? Looking at the falling meteorites, Dustless closed his eyes and communicated with White Zetsu. On the other side, the Edo Tensigen army was also besieging Mariehua. How else can it be? That group of minions was easily suppressed by the Gorosei, 5 elder stars. White Zetsu said helplessly. Hearing this, Dustless frowned slightly. Those Edo Tensigen were all strong people in this world. Most of them were at the vice admiral level. Even if they barely reached the admiral level, they fell to the vice admiral level because of the Edo Tensigen, but their biggest advantage was not their strength, but their immortal body. Before Dustless could ask why, White Zetsu's voice sounded in advance. The native power of this world really can't be underestimated. The truth that science can change everything is true. Chapter 535. Dustless, who was floating in the sky, looked stiff and gloomy. White Zetsu was an existence he created himself. The probability of betraying him or lying to him is 0. Science can change everything. This strange idea is a fantasy for people like Dustless who believe that strength is above everything. Tell me the details. With a hint of killing intent in his tone, Wuchen asked in an unquestionable tone. White Zetsu wouldn't dare to fabricate something out of thin air. Hearing the killing intent in Dustless's tone, White Zetsu's tone was also restrained. If he made a joke while Dustless was in a rage, the consequences were definitely not something he could bear. This hesitation flashed in his tone. Remembering Dustless's cold tone, White Zetsu gritted his teeth and said, I also understand the specifics. In short, the Edo Tensei is controlled by Vegapunk's invention and is bound to a very small environment. Baiju said solemnly. His tone was filled with disbelief. However, that was the truth. He couldn't deny it. The army of the Edo Tensei is bound in a cage by Vegapunk's invention, and the hard wall can't be broken no matter how hard it is. Vegapunk. Thinking of the fat scientist with an unflattering appearance, Dustless's dissatisfaction disappeared in a flash, and he became interested for a while. Vegapunk is the chief scientist of the Navy and the government. He has created and invented countless things in his life, and all kinds of strange designs are also fantastical. He even created a strange life like the artificial dragon. In short, Vegapunk is a very intelligent person, and his inventions are also very practical. Maybe I used to underestimate the scientific theory of this world. Dustless floating in the sky was gloomy, and he opened his eyes solemnly. The legendary ancient weapon Pluto is a product of science. Even according to Dustless's speculation, the Heavenly King is a similarly large space battleship. Forget it, I will go and see it myself. Dustless said softly after cutting off the connection with White Zetsu. He was a little curious about the peerless genius Vegapunk, and he suddenly had the idea of capturing him for his own use. Caesar is good, but he is still far behind Vegapunk. Boom boom boom. The meteorite, which was tens of kilometers in size, slowly fell into the sea, creating huge ripples on the surface of the sea. These guys are really cunning. They know how to plan for a rainy day. Narrowing his eyes slightly, Dustless showed a rare expression of appreciation. Although many of the Kaido pirate regiment's battleships were hit by meteorites, there were still some who escaped, and this group of people was extremely smart. They knew that they would be attacked by Dustless if they sailed carelessly on the sea, so they prepared the coating tools in their previous inventory and urgently coated the hull with film, and then dived into the depths of the sea. Do you think this little bit of cleverness will work? How laughable. Dustless shook his head in disdain. The blue sky darkened once again, and a meteor of the same size as the one before descended upon Dustless's head. There are countless meteorites in outer space. The eye power of Tensigan can even control the moon. These sesame mung bean-sized meteorites are naturally easy for Wuchen to use, and there is no pressure at all. If you can still live like this, it really means that your life is not meant to end, Kaido. With a slight wave of her white and tender little hand, the huge meteorite also fell, slowly falling into the sea. The target is Kaido and his crew in the depths of the sea. In the face of such a large meteorite attack, if the Kaido pirate regiment can still escape, it can only be said that God favors them. And these guys really know how to pick the right time. They always appear at such a coincidental time. The Navy always stands at the best angle to reap the benefits of others. Looking as far as the eye can see, the super-large fleet dozens of kilometers away is slowly approaching, and the unique marine battleships and special flags are clearly visible. Dustless, with his extremely abnormal vision, can even see the marine hero Garp on the platform turret, wearing the Justice cloak. Obviously, he is the leader this time. The Kaido pirate regiment's chances of survival are slim. Because of the special reason of the emergency coating, they didn't have enough preparation. In about half an hour, they need to float to the surface of the sea to fill with oxygen, otherwise, the entire fleet will be buried in the depths of the sea due to suffocation. Mariehua, at the moment, is a different sign. Due to the sudden attack of the Edo Tensei army, the entire Mariehua is almost in ruins. There are countless strong people gathered in Mariehua, and there are many Vice Admiral level characters, and some with strength comparable to Admiral occasionally pass by. But in the face of the Edo Tensei army with an immortal body, they can only look and sigh. The powerful and strange body, no matter how many times it is destroyed and crushed, will be repaired again without limit. And this group of human beings is constantly consuming their physical strength, so the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, the secret card designed by Vegapunk a few years ago, finally bound this group of monsters, but it still can't kill them, it can only restrict their movements. No wonder the Edo Tensei army can't break through. According to their strength, it is indeed impossible. Staring at the huge cage in the distance, the doubts in Dustless's eyes disappeared, and he nodded slightly. Breaking through it with the strength of a vice admiral is indeed a fool's dream. During the War of the Best, the Marine also surrounded the Whitebeard pirates with this thing, restricting them to a narrow range of space, and then Admiral Akainu launched the unique skill, Meteor Volcano, to annihilate them. With these special mysterious substances in front of him, even Whitebeard can't break his defense, let alone this group of Vice Admiral-level Edo Tensei army. Chapter 536. What he saw was a cage composed of countless white walls. It was several meters high, and the surface was extremely smooth. There was no possibility of climbing. Above it was a group of important members of the world government. They stared at the reincarnated Edo Tensei army in the cage in surprise. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Some of the people who had fallen had fought side by side with them. The cage included the former Navy Fleet Admiral, the current world government Commander Kong. Touching his chin, he looked down at the reincarnated Edo Tensei army in the cage. His eyes flashed with regret and killing intent, and from time to time, there was a flash of brilliance in his eyes. Playing with the flesh of the dead, the controller behind is so despicable and cold. Admiral Kong's killing intent was awe-inspiring, and the chill in his mouth froze the air in front of him. It was no wonder that he was so angry. Among these undead army, there were people from the same era as him, and they even carried out missions together in some periods. Commander Kong, it's meaningless to be angry now. I know you're very sad, and I feel the same way. My former companions are among these walking corpses. The fat, strange-looking figure beside him said. Looking closely, this person was the guest of honor of the world government, Vegapunk. The most important plot at the moment should be to discuss how to clean up this group of people who have died. They have been killed and injured once, and they will be killed and injured again in the future. I'm sorry. Vegapunk said with complex emotions, and his tone was apologetic. Among these reincarnated Edo Tensei army, there were many scientists who helped him in the past. He didn't expect to be able to meet his old friends again today, but in such a complicated and awkward situation. You're right, Professor. Right now, we need to discuss how to deal with this group of undying zombies. The other problems are not important. Otherwise, the 5 of them will find trouble with me. Marshal Kong nodded his head seriously. His tone was humble, and there was no sense of superiority at all. Because even if Vegapunk's hands were weak, the power exerted by his brain was far more useful than him, the commander of the army. The commander of the army could be replaced by another one, but Vegapunk was the only one in the world. A scientist will always be a scientist. With a complicated and lost sigh, looking at his reincarnated companions below, Admiral Kong had mixed feelings. At the same time, he sneered at Vegapunk next to him. Among these dead people, many of them were used as human subjects for his experiments. What bullsh** T #1 scientist, he's actually no different from that executioner Caesar. Glancing at the fanatical Vegapunk, Soren cursed in his heart. Without even thinking about it, Commander Kong knew that once these reincarnated dead people fell into the hands of Vegapunk, they would be pushed to the operating table for dissection. The only difference between Caesar and Vegapunk was that the former used civilians for experiments, while Vegapunk used prisoners for experiments. It was not difficult to tell that these dead people had lost their consciousness from their screams. If they fell into the hands of Vegapunk, he would be even more unscrupulous. If these people can be used by the government, it's just a matter of time before the pirates of the world are defeated. Fleet Admiral Kong said with a little longing in his eyes. A team composed of a large number of immortal lieutenant generals could easily sweep across the world. Even the Yonko could only nurse a grievance. That's for sure. Vegapunk smiled with exultation, and his crazy laughter was crazy. Scientists are like this. Sometimes human ethics and secular bottom lines are worthless in their eyes, and sometimes they also talk about benevolence and righteousness, making a great image of saving the world. Just as Chief Commander Kong and Vegapunk were discussing how to deal with this group of Edo Tensei army, in the cage below, a certain crazy Edo Tensei army suddenly calmed down, as if it had regained consciousness, and its eyes had some clarity. This body is still so weak that it can't be complimented. Dushless, who was secretly controlling his consciousness, smiled with a tangled smile. His strength seemed to be all sealed, and he could only exert less than 1% of his body. Edo Tensei was not the 6 paths of pain, and it was not easy to control it for the first time, and his strength was greatly suppressed. It should be no problem to kill him at this distance. Dustless narrowed his eyes and looked up at the top of the cage, Vegapunk, who was discussing with Admiral Kong, and his eyes flashed with a gloomy and piercing murderous intent. This Vegapunk's own strength is slag, but the power he exerts is countless times stronger than that of a marine admiral, and it is extremely difficult to ignore him. Dustless quietly condensed power in his calf, and photons secretly surged between his calf. Relying on this fragile body, Dustless can't exert much strength. At most, he is equal to a vice admiral, and it is no problem to kill Vegapunk. After all, he is only a mortal, and the inventions he creates are shocking, but his own strength is no different from normal human beings. Light speed kick. With the roar falling, the light condensed in his calf suddenly flew out and swept straight towards the place where Vegapunk and Admiral Kong were standing. Boom boom boom, the ear-piercing roar of the explosion resounded, and a huge fireball slowly rose into the air, and the destructive blazing heat wave spread and swept all of Mariewa. This damned wall is ridiculously hard. He thought that these cages that imprisoned the Edo Tensei army would be destroyed, but they only left scorching traces and some irregular depressions. He raised his eyebrows and then looked expectantly at the place where Vegapunk and Admiral Kong were standing. Admiral Kong was unscathed, but the clothes on his upper body had been torn, revealing a strong physique. As for Vegapunk, he was much more embarrassed. Go and call the doctor. Admiral Kong glared fiercely at the reincarnated dead in the cage and shouted at the government personnel around him. At this moment, Vegapunk was quite miserable. His right arm had been melted by the blazing heat, and his whole body was burned beyond recognition. He was only breathing weakly. Chapter 537. Commander Kong's old face was livid as he looked at the half-dead Vegapunk. Although he was extremely happy, he still felt a sense of shame. He, the commander-in-chief of the entire army, was right in front of him, but someone ignored his existence and attacked Vegapunk, an important person, in front of him. The most terrible thing was that it was easy to succeed. Although he protected Vegapunk's life with his own body at the critical moment, Vegapunk's half-dead state was almost the same as having one foot in the underworld. Seeing that Vegapunk was injured, Mariewa's doctors swarmed over and hurriedly put him on a stretcher and carried him back for emergency treatment. If he can't be rescued, they are likely to be buried with him. It's a pity. The Edo Tensei powerhouse controlled by Dustless sighed helplessly. This temporary body can exert such a strong power is already the limit. Boom! A powerful figure galloped over, and the heavy wrist force instantly shattered the head of the reincarnated powerhouse, and the broken debris slowly fell to the ground like snow. In just the blink of an eye, it was restored. Glancing over, it was Commander Kong who was full of murderous intent. Due to excessive rage, even the sides of his temples and the blue veins on his forehead could be seen. It seems that you are different from those zombies. His cold eyes were as sharp as a knife. Staring at the corpse of the Edo Tensei controlled by Dustless, Commander Kong gritted his teeth and said with hatred, "Your courage is not small, big enough. How dare you kill someone in front of me? Do you know who he is? If Vegapunk was someone else, it would be fine, but the key is that this guy is too important. Most of the technological inventions of the government and the navy were made by him. If he is killed." Thinking of this, Commander Kong's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Of course I know who he is. The corpse controlled by Dustless smiled and said with a playful look on his face, the #1 scientist of the world government. If he didn't have this title, in all fairness, I really wouldn't attack him. Immediately, his eyes stared at Commander Kong and circled him. After which, he seriously said, apart from this, I also wanted to test the strength of the legendary commander of the entire army. It is indeed similar to what I had expected. His strength is slightly better than 100 Beast Kaido, one of the Yonko, and he is enough to fight Whitebeard head-on. Just a moment ago, Dustless was able to see the strength of the commander. The only person who dared to fight him alone was probably the domineering Garp. This guy is already so old, and his body is ridiculously tough. He was able to remain unscathed even after taking a direct hit from the lightspeed kick. Nodding slightly, Dustless could even assert that the hardness of Commander Kong's body was the strongest person he had ever seen. This was probably the origin of his Steel Bones nickname. He didn't have the Fruit's ability, and he had completely relied on his extreme hockey to train his body into a body of steel. In this aspect, he was very similar to the hero Garp. Both of them have superb armament hockey. Even if you are immortal, I will kill you hundreds of times today. With red eyes, Commander Kong said angrily. He was originally the kind of soldier with an extremely irritable temper. He attacked Vegapunk first, and then continued to provoke him. Even if Commander Kong was as calm as a mountain, he was furious at this moment, and the raging fire burned his reason. If you can make me bleed, you win. Commander Kong disdainfully snorted and sneered. Commander Kong signaled to Dustless to secretly control the undead to come over. A zombie whose strength is only at the level of a vice admiral, or even lower than a vice admiral, is not worthy of his attention. Seeing that the zombie didn't move, Commander Kong was even more contemptuous, and then he saw that the zombie was making a strange handprint, as if he was afraid of himself. Commander Kong proudly said, as long as you can force me back, you win, attack with all your strength. Boom! Before Commander Kong's voice fell, a fist completely condensed from green trees broke through the ground, and Commander Kong, who was caught off guard, was blasted away. Boom! His body slammed into the special cage wall, leaving a faint dent. Commander Kong's body then fell to the ground, and there were obvious fist marks on his abdomen. Impossible, it is only at the level of a vice admiral, how can it exert the strength of an admiral? Commander Kong wiped the blood stains from the corner of his mouth, and the blood stains in his gums were clearly visible, and he was shocked. This group of undead zombies was still at the level of a vice admiral before, but now they suddenly attacked and broke out the strength of an admiral. How could he not be surprised? At the same time, his old face was burning with pain. He just boasted, and as a result, he was beaten by brute force. He felt like he was being played. As the commander of the entire army of the world government, someone dared to play with him again and again. The reason is very simple, because the person has changed. The undead controlled by Dustless said casually, and his frivolous and cold tone was calm. All of this was under his control. By replacing the consciousness of the original Edo Tensei dead person with his consciousness, his combat power will naturally be greatly improved. However, this corpse is too weak, and it is only Edo Tensei, not Pain, who can control it freely, so its coordination ability is extremely poor, and it can only exert the strength of a quasi-admiral. Then his consciousness withdrew from the Edo Tensei puppet. This kind of unexpected sneak attack can only work once. Dustless has enough confidence in Commander Kong. At present, the strength that this temporary corpse can exert is only limited to the level of a quasi-admiral. Maybe it can kill Commander Kong, but Dustless is not in a leisurely mood. First, this old guy is not easy to deal with. Second, the purpose has been achieved, and there is no need to entangle at all. Second, there is an unexpected guest in Dustless's house. There is always someone better than you. Next time, if you are so careless, you may lose your life. In the boundless void, only a cold warning was left, full of strong magic, lingering in the sky for a long time without dispersing, and resounding in the ears of everyone in Mariewa. Chapter 538. Commander Kong's old face turned purple, and he stared at the zombie army indignantly. His expression was particularly gloomy. In any case, the fact that he failed could not be concealed. There was also a needle in his heart indirectly, and he was extremely annoyed. He had the strength to destroy the world and crush the opponent hundreds of times at will, but he couldn't stop the opponent. Not only that, but he was ridiculed, and even because of excessive contempt of the opponent, he was unexpectedly attacked and flew away. No one could hold their old face. Anyway, he was also a Marine veteran with the highest information, and he really felt ashamed. Caw caw caw, the ground burst open, and the army of Edo Tensei seemed to have never appeared. They went deep into the ground and disappeared, leaving only the world government staff around them. They can appear suddenly like ghosts, and they can disappear in an instant, and they have an immortal body. This kind of invincible enemy is definitely a nightmare-like existence. In the brightly lit spacious villa, the graceful and luxurious peerless beauty stood there leisurely, the pearls and jewels around her neck set off her graceful bearing. She had long wavy golden hair and wore an orange hair ornament. She wore a long robe with a pattern of fish scales, and her bright blue eyes gave off a dignified aura. Between her brows, there was an air of nobility. It was not difficult to see that the visitor was either rich or noble. "Oh, what a rare guest. I didn't expect you to be so clever that you even know how to sneak into Mariewa." A frivolous and slightly unexpected voice sounded, and Dustless's figure appeared immediately. She thought that the person in front of her would never set foot in a dirty and sinful place like Mariewa in his life, but she didn't expect that he would take the initiative to come to her door today. Looking closely, it was Princess Odoheim from the Fishman Island. After a few months of not seeing each other, Princess Odoheim was more charming than before. Because of her high position, she was full of nobility, and her eyes were full of majesty. Her phoenix eyes were noble, and she indeed had the noble temperament that a princess should have. "If I remember correctly, you should be my slave. Have you forgotten even the most basic etiquette? Or, after returning to the Fishman Island for a few months, you think you can get rid of my control?" Dustless carefully looked at Princess Aji, who was not angry and imposing. His tone was oppressive, forcing her to kneel in front of him with a pale face. "Remember this clearly. In front of others, you are the consort that everyone respects. But don't forget, in front of me, you will always be a slave," Dustless said coldly as he glanced at consort Aji. When she was pregnant with Shirahoshi, Dustless had already seen that she was still a virgin. Although he did not know the reason, he could be sure that she was still a virgin today. "I certainly don't care, it's just a slave, it's fine to play with it." Secretly laughing, Dustless's casual words sent consort Aji to hell. The blood flowing all over her body was drawn away, and her beautiful eyes were full of despair. Regardless of consort Aji, Dustless threw her on the sofa rudely. "Are you people of Tianlong so barbaric? Don't you know how to have fun?" The panicked consort Aji did not expect the change to be so fast. Like a frightened little white rabbit, she curled up into a ball, guarding against the wolf-like Dustless. "Silly woman, are you an idiot? Or have you seen people of Tianlong who like to talk about love?" Dustless, who had made up his mind to completely trample on the dignity of consort Aji, showed no mercy. For this kind of insensible woman who always thought that she could change everything, only by completely sending her to hell could she recognize herself. Chapter 539. Looking at consort Aji's face that was about to vomit blood, Dustless was secretly pleased. She wanted to retreat in order to advance, but he would not let consort Aji get what she wanted. With her little tricks, it was no different from a fool's dream. You Consort Aji's watery eyes were filled with killing intent. Her beautiful and delicate face was extremely gloomy. She did not expect that Dustless's taste would be so heavy even after she had made it so clear. He was much more shameless than she had imagined. "Call me master." A bone-piercing cold light flashed in his eyes. Dustless aimed his palm at Consort Aji. A majestic repulsive force shot out from his hand, locking onto Consort Aji. Caw caw caw, his expensive clothes instantly exploded into pieces. His cold eyes were emotionless. He looked at the panicked Consort Aji like a stray dog. Dustless's face was cold. Seeing Consort Aji's eyes oozing with sparkling tears, Dustless's unshakable heart did not change. This kind of person was not worthy of his attention. In addition, those who dared to resist had to pay the price. This little woman's temperament is not bad. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes lit up. His mind flashed. Consort Aji's natural and noble temperament made one's imagination run wild. Suddenly feeling her body turn cold, Consort Aji glared at Dustless in anger. The killing intent between her brows was clearly visible. She did not expect Dustless to be such a dirty and despicable person. Dustless stood silently in front of Consort Aji. He looked at her with a mocking expression. His mocking expression was no different from watching a clown's performance. "You forced me to do this." The quick-witted Princess Aji's pretty face was resolute. She decisively picked up the fruit knife on the stone table and pressed it against her snow-white neck. Her cold eyes were filled with determination. She silently said, "If you look at me one more time, I will kill myself." However, Wu Chen passed by with a smile. He was extremely calm and emotionless. His eyes were filled with indifference towards Princess Aji. He continued to stare at her without turning away. "Your eyesight is not bad." Nodding slightly, Dustless remained unmoved. His invasive gaze circled around her. Every inch of Princess Aji's body entered Dustless's eyes. "You want to fight me? This is interesting. Unfortunately, you chose the wrong person. This time, not only will I make you obediently put down your knife, I will also make you deliver yourself to me," Dustless said with a confident smile. He did not care about Princess Aji's threat at all. "Automatically come to the door. In your dreams." Glaring fiercely at Dustless, Princess Aji showed no sign of weakness. His calm eyes stared straight at Princess Aji's naked body. Princess Aji, who was angry out of humiliation, trembled and pressed against her throat. There were obvious bloodstains. Unable to endure this vicious gaze, Consort Aji was just about to commit suicide when Dustless's light voice suddenly rang out, causing Consort Aji's movements to abruptly freeze. "If you want to be the biggest sinner in the history of the Fishman Island since its establishment, you can kill yourself." Sitting on the sofa opposite Princess Aji calmly and drinking coffee calmly, Dustless's tone carried a warning meaning. Princess Aji sneered. She no longer had any attachments. Living was a sin for her. As a respected princess of the Fishmen Island, she was secretly a slave of the people of Tianlong. Moreover, she had been humiliated by them time and time again. Instead of dragging out an ignoble existence, she might as well die and end everything. Anyway, living was suffering anyway. If I remember correctly, a few years ago, the Fishman Island was sheltered by the Whitebeard pirates. When Princess Aji was discouraged, Dustless's words made her stunned. Her eyebrows squeezed together, and she was keenly aware that there was more to Dustless's words. Then she remembered Dustless's cold and bloodthirsty character. Her breathing stagnated, and her fists clenched tightly. Others may not be so crazy, but according to the Tianlong people's way of doing things, it is indeed possible to do such a crazy thing. It seems that you have guessed my thoughts. With a smile on his mouth, Dustless smiled gloomily, and the space in the villa was faintly frozen. He said coldly, "Yes, as you think, you can commit suicide, but this account, I will count on the head of the Fishman Island. At that time, I will crush the entire Fishman Island and completely make the Fishman Island disappear from this planet, and the Fishman race will be swept into the garbage dump of history. When the voice fell, the entire villa had condensed into ice, and the surroundings were frozen. Dustless's eyes also turned scarlet, like an apostle from hell, and the smell of blood was overwhelming. Princess Audrey's body trembled uncontrollably. She was abandoned by the whole world. She was confused, and she stared at Dustless's face in fear. She suppressed the panic in her heart and asked, "The Fishman Island has nothing to do with you and me. Why do you want to kill me?" "Bullshit." Dustless sneered again and again, and his words made Princess Audrey speechless. He said sarcastically, "A few years ago, the Fishman Island was sheltered by the Whitebeard pirates, and it can be regarded as joining the evil pirate side. As a person of Tianlong, I destroy your Fishman race in the name of absolute justice, to punish evil and promote good. On the one hand, the Fishman Island has been sheltered by the Whitebeard pirates, and on the other hand, they want to be protected by the world government and coexist peacefully with humans. Do you still want to kill yourself now?" Suddenly, he stood up and looked down at Princess Audrey from a winner's point of view, and said coldly, "It is undeniable that everyone is free, but you, as my slave, want to resist me, you have to pay an equal price." After a long silence, seeing Princess Audrey put down the fruit knife with tears on her face, Dustless saw the smug smile on the corner of his mouth. Women, sometimes they are so easy to deal with. Falling in love is a time-consuming and troublesome process, and he has no time. The process is despicable and shameless, but it is far more reliable than anything. If you don't want the Fishman Island to be destroyed, get over here. Princess Audrey nodded mechanically. Her eyes were lifeless. She walked in front of Wu Qin like a walking corpse. Her appearance of letting him pick her was pitiful. "Well, as I said before, you still take the initiative to come to me." Chapter 541. Dustless still vaguely remembers that Hawkeye and Red Hair Shanks had a sword competition, and the day of becoming a legend was close at hand. As for the reason for the sword competition, he rarely heard of it. All in all, this is the best opportunity to plot against Red Hair Shanks. He doesn't know if he can successfully kill him, but at least he can give him an unforgettable lesson. The heroic red-haired Shanks had a well-known weakness: he was a loyal and righteous man. "Are the crew members of Red Hair Shanks imprisoned in the deep-sea prison?" Dustless asked in a hoarse and low voice, his tone full of killing intent. "Yes, they are all imprisoned on the 6th floor of Impel Down." Although White Zetsu didn't know why, he still answered truthfully. Silently nodding, he suddenly felt that the old man Garp was much kinder and more lovely. Using the crew members to threaten the other party, this kind of despicable and dirty thing is not something he would do. The deep-sea prison, it is dark all year round, bottomless, and suffocating. Since the last time Hawkeye and Doflamingo robbed Caesar from the prison, the defense of the deep-sea prison has been strengthened and transformed, using materials several times harder than the original. The cold and wet 6th floor of hell, eternal hell. This is the lowest floor of the deep-sea prison, filled with a nauseating stench. The flowing air is full of depression. Every time the lungs are inhaled, the whole body will be heavier, like an invisible mountain on the back. The figures shuttling in the darkness are vague. Sure enough, it's a place where the strong gather, the majestic perceptions spread out. The prisoners of the entire, eternal hell were in his eyes. Dustless's tone was raised a lot, with a lot of emotion. No wonder Blackbeard chose his companions here. Several powerful auras immediately attracted Dustless's attention. Many vicious pirates in history were secretly imprisoned here, living a dark life. "Oh, bastard, who is so bold, disturbing my sleep?" This kind of delicate prisoner can also be imprisoned on the 6th floor. "Hey, it seems wrong, why is that guy not even wearing a handcuff?" Many powerful pirates noticed that someone was unscrupulously spying. They woke up from their sleep, opened their eyes, and looked at the young figure in front of them in horror. His slightly disheveled black hair, even though the surrounding space was filled with black, his pair of eyes that were as bright as the stars were still so eye-catching and eye-catching. What makes these pirates most envious and surprised is that this guy can come in without handcuffs. As such, his identity was obvious. He was definitely a member of the government. Ignoring the curious eyes around him, Dustless went straight into the depths of the dark space. Come, I will tear you apart immediately. Hee hee. Such a delicate government official can enter the eternal hell, hee hee. I'm afraid that his status is beyond imagination. Let me go, I'll kill this little white face, ha. The original dead space was replaced by laughter, and the pirates in the prison ridiculed Dustless, their faces full of contempt. In their eyes, Dustless is the kind of incompetent waste who relies on his identity. You people, better sleep for me. His eyes quietly spread. Dustless's eyes were replaced by a cold light. His pupils suddenly enlarged, and invisible energy fluctuations burst out from his body. It was just a short moment, and the prison, which was still noisy, suddenly became silent. Looking around, more than 80% of the people had turbid eyes, their faces were full of horror, their bodies were uncontrollably foaming, and they were directly stunned by some mysterious force. Only a very small number of people resisted the erosion of Haushaku-haki. Most of these people were the future crew of Blackbeard, as well as some rumored pirates. They all belonged to the period when Roger dominated. He didn't know how long it took before he came to the fence where the red-haired crew was imprisoned. Lewis South, this is the person you want to see, but he is an extremely dangerous person, and it is not recommended for you to go in and contact him. If you want to enter here safely, you must use the identity of a celestial dragon. In the face of the descendant of the Creator, these jailers are more affectionate than their own father. Don't talk nonsense, open it for me. Dustless waved his hand impatiently. The jailer's face was stiff, but he still took out the key. Even if he was convicted, it was a matter of the future. If he offended Dustless now, he may be spilled blood on the spot. Kakaka, the roar of the rolling chain sounded, and the cell was opened in the blink of an eye. Dustless walked in, and his eyes fell directly on the figure in the darkness. His tone was a little magnetic, like the conversation between old friends. Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise, and he didn't expect that it was him who was caught. I heard that the crew of the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates were caught by Hero, Vice Admiral Garp. But to be honest, I didn't expect it to be you. His sharp eyes stared straight at the figure sleeping leisurely on the bed. It was extremely difficult for Dustless not to know the unprecedented person in front of him. Known as the person with the highest IQ, he is also the vice captain of the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates, Ben Beckman. Don't talk to others in such a familiar tone. Sorry, you are not welcome here. A light voice resounded through the dark and silent space, and Ben Beckman said with a tone of surprise. Hearing this, Dustless just smiled and brushed it off. Although I don't know what the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates are up to. But one thing is certain, you should have been caught deliberately, right? Chapter 542. Beckman's expressionless cheeks loosened, and his eyes flashed with hidden killing intent. Even though it was fleeting, it was still perceived by Dustless. The killing intent was like a flood. Even if it was a tiny and weak water flow, it was still flowing out. Even if the concealment was flawless, it still couldn't escape Wu Chen's discerning eyes and his abnormal perceptive power. The net of heaven grinds slowly but surely. Everyone actually had this kind of unrealistic fantasy, and Wu Chen was no exception. The only difference was that he seemed to have woken up from a dream now, and he was adept at overlooking the overall development from the perspective of a bystander, and then he took advantage of the situation to lead the situation to a favorable situation for himself. I'm not interested in the conspiracy of your Akagami, red hair, pirates, and I'm not interested in exploring. Looking down at the unmoved Beckman, Dustless's expression turned gloomy, and his eyes emitted a threatening chill. But now I can be sure that you, who are now wearing a collar, are my prey. The moment his voice fell, an invisible pressure enveloped him. Dustless felt cold all over, and there was a sense of suffocation. He was keenly aware that a gloomy killing intent was locked on him. Looking up, it was Beckman who opened his eyes and was full of killing intent. The Akagami, red hair, pirates are really crouching tigers and hidden dragons. This young vice-captain is strong enough to compete with the highest battle admiral of the marine, and even has an advantage over the admiral. Turning a deaf ear to the killing intent that was locked on him, Dustless speculated in his heart, and at the same time, he was sure that Beckman was deliberately throwing himself into the tiger's mouth. Perhaps in a head-on confrontation, Garp can destroy the admiral of the marine headquarters, but if he wants to capture the admiral by himself, it's more difficult, not to mention there's red hair Shanks. Beckman's thoughts were meticulous and meticulous. Everything he did was watertight. Sometimes, intelligence was more lethal than pure strength. As the most honorable, celestial dragon, in the world, you came all the way here to see a prisoner like me. Your purpose and thoughts are not simple, Beckman said, emphasizing the words celestial dragon as he locked his eyes on Dustless. He had clearly heard the warden's respectful tone and the word saint used by him. Coupled with the fact that Shanks had once told Beckman about Dustless's appearance, he had a vague idea of Dustless's identity. Not pure. This problem is no longer important, but one thing is certain. Your Akagami, red hair, pirates are about to be in big trouble. Dustless suddenly raised his voice by quite a few decibels, and said with a mocking tone, "What intentions you have, it doesn't matter to me. In any case, the initiator of this unprecedented crisis is you, Ben Beckman." Regardless of whether he could hear it or not, his words rang through the dark and cold space. Akagami, red hair, pirates killing each other, this drama can't be missed. When Dustless stepped out of the cell, the jailers in Impel Down hurriedly rushed to treat Beckman. Marine headquarters told them that Beckman was an important prisoner and they couldn't afford to lose him. Dustless is a Tenryubito, and Marine headquarters naturally can't punish him. When the time comes, it will be their group of lowest jailers. Ah. Chapter 543. Dustless really doesn't know the motive and purpose of the Akagami, red hair, pirates, and where the sword is pointing to. He is not a god, and red hair Shanks is a thoughtful man. The only thing that is certain is that no matter what happens in the end, red hair Shanks will not abandon his companions. Dustless only needs to wait for the rabbit. Although the method is very stubborn, the effect is immediate. Hastily leaving Impel Down, a place filled with smoke, he deliberately took a detour to look at the murderer, Shiryu of the Rain. However, this guy was like a sculpture, his whole body was full of coldness and isolation. He just looked at Dustless and continued to sleep like a prince, completely treating him as heir. Time flew by like a white steed. By the time he came to his senses, a few months had already slipped through his fingers. 5 days ago, Hawkeye left without saying goodbye. According to Dustless's guess, it should be to settle things with red hair Shanks. After all, the relationship between Hawkeye and red hair Shanks is known to the world. They are enemies and friends. Now that Hawkeye had taken refuge in Dustless, the two were bound to make a decision. Their previous relationship was likely to be completely severed because of this relationship, and they would go their separate ways. Dustless is more concerned about Ben Beckman in the deep-sea prison than the collision between Hawkeye and red hair Shanks. This guy was inexplicably deliberately caught in Impel Down. It is absolutely impossible for him to repent. The probability of expecting this group of pirates to turn back and be saved is 0. There must be a demon when things are abnormal. This is the truth that the ancient sages have summed up after thousands of trials. Therefore, Dustless also sent White Setsu's doppelganger to keep an eye on Impel Down's movements. Beckman also followed the rules. In addition to recuperating all day, there was no change day after day. During this time, Dustless's previous relaxed rhythm of life has been completely disrupted. After several months, Kagaya's lower abdomen has already swelled high. According to Dustless's speculation, she will be ready to give birth in the next few days. Naturally, Dustless, who used to only occasionally enter and exit the system world, now appears more frequently. This is not without benefits. After a long time, the cold relationship between Dustless and Kagaya has gradually warmed up recently. At least, they don't mock each other as before. In the system's world, it was always sunny and sunny. In the distance, on the sparkling lake, the ancient pavilions are clearly visible. The ancient vicissitudes of life, revealing the mysterious poetic and picturesque artistic conception. The trees and rocks are elegant and majestic. The two figures in the pavilion are clearly visible. Looking at them, it is Kagaya and Dustless. She looks a little strange, but she is very likable. His eyes quietly sized up the bloated figure in front of him. A faint smile appeared on Wu Chen's face. The figure he was observing was undoubtedly Kagaya. She was no longer as domineering and arrogant as before. Now, Kagaya was dignified and quiet. Perhaps it was because of her maternal instincts, she smiled sweetly and appeared approachable. The goddess's oppression is also restrained, which is completely opposite to Dustless's impression of Kagaya. The world is impermanent. Seeing Kagaya's benevolent state, Dustless's heart was mixed, and he felt like he had not woken up from a dream. He glanced at the young life formed in Kagaya's belly. The past grievances and disputes can vanish because of the blessing of the child. You're right. Fate is indeed hard to fathom. Hui chimed in. Her light voice soothed one's heart and revealed a hint of helplessness. Dustless sighed and then walked forward to support Kagaya's body, knowing that she has paid too much for the child in her belly. Unlike before, Kagaya did not reject Dustless's embrace this time. Instead, she leaned on his shoulder and quietly nestled in Dustless's arms. Her white jade-like face enjoyed this unfamiliar smell very much. She snuggled into Dustless's arms like a lazy cat. I also didn't expect that I would become like today. Her soft tone was hesitant. She also had doubts about the future. She never thought that she would become like this one day. She looked at Dustless deeply and then said in a bitter and playful tone, "Sometimes I even suspect that you used a technique that is far beyond, Kodo Emitsukami, on me, which caused me to become like this." Blinking her watery eyes, Kagaya looked at the calm Dustless. Her eyes were full of seriousness. She really had such doubts in the past. I don't know that kind of technique, and am I that kind of person? Dustless's head was hanging with black lines, and his face was full of helplessness. He glared at her. If Kagaya was not pregnant, he would definitely immediately teach her a lesson. It was true that emotional women have rich thoughts. His heart was as light as clouds. Dustless's cheeks burst into a smile. He was quite gratified that Kagaya could be so cheerful and optimistic. It also meant that Kagaya could accept him. To be fair, the change in Kagaya's temperament was indeed beyond Dustless's expectations. At present, it could only be attributed to Kagaya's motherly nature. Maybe after giving birth to the child, she would return to her previous unapproachable appearance. There was nothing wrong with building a good relationship with her now. You must be thinking of something bad again. The questioning tone was unusually certain. Kagaya wrinkled her nose and said. She felt that Dustless's smile was a little strange, but she couldn't tell what exactly it was. Anyway, it was evil. She had a creepy feeling of being targeted by a cunning old fox. Chapter 544. The duel between Hawkeye and Red Hair Shanks naturally attracted pirates from all over the world to watch the fun. It was rare to see such a scene in decades. Groups of pirates were like cats smelling blood. They came from all directions and came from thousands of miles away. No matter what, the nature of pirates has not changed. Of course, there are also some pirates with ulterior motives. Even Marines' undercover agents exist among them. Their motives are unknown. Boom boom boom, on the island in the distance, a huge straight black abyss appeared in the sky. The void was pulled by two strong forces and turned into a dark crack, bottomless. Moreover, it was constantly swallowing the surrounding sky like a whale, rapidly expanding its area. This terrifying spatial buckle actually covered the entire island. Bang bang bang, a powerful wave of power swept through the world, and the roar was extremely oppressive. As far as the eye could see, the island in the distance was trembling and shaking. The entire sea was shaking along with the movement of the island. Many pirate groups just watched from a distance, not to mention setting foot on the island. They didn't even dare to get close for fear of being swallowed by the slash. The strongest collision between Red Hair Shanks and Hawkeye is very exciting, but you must be alive to watch it. In the center of the island, the ground was wantonly rewritten, and the strong majestic mountain became the object of bullying, fragile like withered leaves, and can only drift with the waves of energy fluctuations. As far as the eye could see, some of the mountains had already been flattened. The flashes of swords and sabers that flashed by were the natural enemies of these towering mountains. This time, you have improved very quickly, Shanks. Hawkeye held the black sword and looked at Red Hair Shanks, who was obviously relaxed, and the surprise and astonishment in his tone was undisguised. Hearing this, Red Hair Shanks smiled and said, "You are not bad, my hawk." From the tone of the conversation between the two, it is not difficult to hear that the relationship between the two is more harmonious than the world thinks. As competitors, they also appreciate each other. I thought my improvement was fast enough, but I didn't expect Shanks to be so fast. Hawkeye looked cautious, quietly looking at the narrow dark crack in the sky, and sighed in his heart. He was at a disadvantage when it came to the flexible application of Haushiku Haki. Inevitably, he remembered what Shanks had said to him before. In terms of pure swordsmanship, Shanks wasn't as good as Hawkeye, but when it came to pirates, Hawkeye wasn't as good as Shanks. Why did you submit to that man? You shouldn't be that kind of person, Hawkeye. Red-haired Shanks' face darkened as he asked in a hoarse voice. The two of them used to be best friends who shared everything with each other. But now, because of the intruder Dustless, a crack had appeared in their relationship that had been harmonious for many years. It had evolved into a duel where they had no choice but to gamble their lives. Dustless was the instigator, the one who stirred up trouble. Of course, it's to pursue the path of Sword Dao. Hawkeye replied calmly. For him, being a pirate or being a Shichibukai didn't matter. As long as he could set foot on the ultimate path of Kendo, pirates and Marines were not important to him. You've changed. Looking at Hawkeye, Shanks said with regret. At the same time, the hatred in his heart towards Dustless increased by another degree. A like-minded friend had been easily turned over by Dustless. The red-haired Shanks' heart was filled with mixed feelings. He used to extend an olive branch to Hawkeye, but he was finally rejected by the latter. Now Hawkeye joined Dustless's forces, which was tantamount to indirectly slapping his face. It's you, Shanks. From beginning to end, my goal is to pursue the peak of Kendo. Hawkeye's black sword flashed with a cold light. His eyes were sharper than an eagle's as he stared at the red-haired Shanks. With a casual swing of his hand, a long and narrow crack appeared on the ground. Whiz! Shanks didn't show any weakness when he saw this, and the sword in his hand fell, and the air was cut through, and then the crimson chop raged along the tip of the sword. Boom, 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 the two powerful forces inevitably collided, and the ground under their feet was always bullied, and a huge pit suddenly appeared, occupying 1/5 of the island area. This is a duel between the top former, and when all the strength breaks out, an island can be annihilated at will. You still have that unrealistic idea, Shanks. Hawkeye's amber pupils saw through the inner secrets of Shanks, and he sneered, "That man is not in the same dimension as us, Shanks." Seeing that his friend was so stubborn, Hawkeye heavily persuaded, "Only by following the trend will you progress, and the consequences of going against the current will only be broken." Thinking of Wu Chen's influence that was both legal and illegal, Hawkeye Mihawk felt a wave of depression in his heart. His forehead faintly broke out in cold sweat, and he could not help but inhale cold air. His expression faintly showed fear. As his celestial dragons, Dustless can mobilize power beyond imagination, abandoning the Marine headquarters, and Doflamingo, these lackeys, not to mention, once the secretly created Pluton comes out, the consequences will be no less than a super earthquake in the world. And Dustless's own strength has also reached the realm of perfection. As for how deep his strength is, people who have seen him really burst out his full strength, I'm afraid that they have already reported to hell. That bastard. What kind of monster is he? The red-haired Shanks looked extremely gloomy, and when he saw Hawkeye's expression, his heart fell to the bottom of the valley, and his heart roared violently. He knew what kind of person Hawkeye was better than anyone else. The existence that can make Hawkeye, who is more arrogant than the sky, show fear, how strong is he? Shanks, I can tell you clearly that the probability of defeating that person by conventional means is 0. Chapter 545. Dustless, who is far away in Mariewa, is different from ordinary people. He enjoys luxurious VIP treatment that the world should not have. Through a special projection Den Mushy, every move that happens can't escape his control. Does it affect everything? In the warm villa, Dustless muttered to himself. He glanced at the elegant Boa Hancock and quietly sized up her bright and cold eyes. Unknowingly, Wuchen could see that she didn't care about life at all. Similarly, Hancock, as a maid, was also affected by Dustless's identity as a Tianlong person, and she gradually became indifferent to human life. The person who affected all of this was Dustless. After a while, it seemed that he had figured out the doubts that had been troubling him for a long time. Dustless's mouth suddenly raised an intriguing smile. "Louis South, you." Hancock frowned and asked doubtfully. Dustless waved his hand indifferently, indicating that it was okay. Dustless suddenly remembered the trace of Princess Odoheim. For about half a month, Dustless didn't see her. It was like she evaporated out of thin air, and the whole person completely disappeared from Dustless's vision. "Sister Odoheim has been very weak recently. It's all your fault. 1,000 coquettish 100 coquettish by coquettish 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 because she had to bear Dustless's indifferent and ruthless torture, or simply trampling, Princess. Odoheim was already full of holes, and every day was like a year. Perhaps it was because they were both slaves and they could empathize with each other. Hancock and Princess Odoheim had nothing to say. During this period of time, when Hancock was half asleep in the middle of the night, she could often hear Princess Odoheim's unbearable torture and painful sobbing. She wanted to die but didn't dare to die. She was full of despair for the future. Every time she thought of it, Hancock couldn't help but have goosebumps. She asked for it. Dustless smiled at Hancock's complaint. He had an expression that it had nothing to do with him. He could only blame Princess Odoheim for being insensible. If Consort Augie was tactful, Dustless would naturally choose to treat her with courtesy. However, that woman had beautiful dreams of saving Fishman Island from danger every day. Dustless could only let her better experience what it felt like to be better off dead. Only when one is in despair can one look at the world in a different way. At the same time, he looked at Hancock and said, "Also, I didn't expect your courage to be so much bigger than before. You even dare to complain to this young master. Crawl over here obediently, my little slave." The only successful jailbreak in history is the Golden Lion Shiki, who is also known as one of the 3 legendary pirates, and the Pirate King, Gold Roger. Even so, the price paid is great. Shiki lost 2 legs because of this. After today, there will be a successful jailbreak in the 6th floor of the Eternal Hell. In the dark cell where you can't see your fingers, bright eyes suddenly swept. The eyes were like torches, full of unfathomable reason and wisdom. Looking closely, it is the vice captain of the Akagami pirates, Ben Beckman. He suddenly stood up and looked at the black chains that bound his limbs. The contempt in his eyes was obvious. It seems that this black chain that is thicker than a human arm is as fragile as a rope. Chapter 546. These special black handcuffs are carefully made of sea stone. Once the ability user touches it, they will be powerless. Unless they cut off their limbs, the chance of escaping is almost 0. Beckman is not an ability user, and the effect of the sea stone handcuffs on him is greatly reduced. However, even so, it is not easy to escape. The hardness of sea stone is better than diamonds. It is impossible to escape without any effort. Only a peerless powerhouse like Whitebeard can break the sea stone handcuffs with brute force. Fortunately, Beckman expected all this in advance and planned the steps of the escape in advance. Can I really control everything? I don't know what kind of expression you will have after I escape. I really look forward to it. In the dark cell, Beckman's face was full of reverie. His eyes were a little gray and empty. He seemed to be imagining what kind of expression Dustless would have after he knew that he had successfully escaped. Caw caw caw. Chong chong chong, his sharp teeth bit the bandages all over his body. Countless hard iron wires and various keys fell to the ground, making a crisp and pleasant sound. In fact, Beckman's injury had recovered a long time ago. Because of his year-round exercise, his physical recovery ability is far better than ordinary humans. He deliberately wrapped this bandage just to better hide the collection of equipment. Where the hell did you get these things? White Zetsu, who was responsible for monitoring Beckman, poked his head out of the ground. His eyes were enlarged several times. He looked at the various keys all over the ground in disbelief. He could not help but take a deep breath. Boom! Just as he was about to ask, a powerful force came head-on. White Zetsu snorted and his body was uncontrollably slammed against the thick wall. Before White Zetsu could counterattack, a strong and powerful hand grabbed White Zetsu's throat. He struggled with all his strength and could not escape the shackles of this big hand. He opened his eyes with difficulty. It was Beckman with cold eyes. Where did you get it? Beckman's gloomy cheeks were filled with ridicule. He said sarcastically, "Of course, the prison guards here sent it automatically. Do you think I brought it in to impel down? Or do you think you can escape through the ground?" Lifting White Zetsu with ease, Beckman revealed his strong physique. His bulging muscles were filled with explosive power. As the right-hand man of red hair shanks, his strength was extremely shocking. In a place like Impel Down, you have to do a body search before you come in. After several processes, it is impossible to quietly bring things in. If breaking out of prison was so easy, the Golden Lion Shirji would not have to cripple his own legs. Don't tell me you, looking at Beckman in shock, White Zetsu's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He vaguely guessed how Beckman had obtained these tools. His face suddenly became gloomy. Kid, you're smart enough. You can see the light of day again. It's what Dushless expected. In a dark corner, White Zoo's main body sneered again and again. He looked at Beckman, who was concentrating, like a clown. His face was full of contempt. Dustless had expected that this kid would escape from prison in some unknown way. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.